Afternoon and welcome to the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce and Town of West Hartford's Small Business Virtual Forum. Today we have with us our guest, Mayor Shari Cantor. I'm Chris Conway, Executive Director of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to welcome you today. I would also like to thank the Mayor. Mayor Cantor is always a visible and active supporter of the business community, and that certainly has not changed in the wake of COVID-19, and we appreciate the support, and we appreciate her being available today to share updates and answer your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen Gorski, the town's Economic Development Specialist.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you so much to everybody who's taking the time out to attend today. This is the third of our joint installments of these small business forums. We are incredibly excited to hear from our mayor today. One housekeeping note for anybody that does have any questions throughout this whole entire forum, please enter them into the question box or the chat box, and we will have a Q&A round after we hear a presentation from our mayor. Without further ado, I will kick it over to our incredibly dedicated, as Chris said, very visible, very caring mayor, Shari Cantor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Chris, for all that you do. We have a great leadership team on economic development. Kristen from the town and partnering with Chris from the chamber, and Kate and Jess, thanks so much for all that you do behind the scenes and making this all happen. So I am thrilled to be here. I want to thank both Kristen and Chris for hosting not only Senator Blumenthal but Commissioner Lehman. I hope you could participate in those sessions as well. They were really informative. I know every question can't be answered. Every business has different concerns, and that's what we're all about, is listening to you and understanding what you need. Just from the town's standpoint, but let me just start by saying our country is in a really challenging time right now. And I know businesses are not only concerned about recovering from COVID, but now the challenges of so much turmoil in our country. We are all so much in pain about the unjustified and horrible killing of George Floyd that we all saw, but also the incredible destruction that's happening as well. And this is so painful. So we as a community are united in our fight against racism, injustice, and we're all about community. And our West Hartford PD are incredible partners to our business community, and we work very, very intimately and closely with them. And I just want you to know that I'm here to listen. Many more conversations are going to happen over time, but I just wanted to recognize the challenges that so many businesses are facing now, but our communities are also facing, and every single individual in our country. Heavy times. So when COVID was really impacting the country and then the state of Connecticut, on April 1st, as you all probably know, the governor adopted or passed the ability for municipalities to have property tax relief. And so West Hartford, we think, was the first town to adopt both programs that the state offered. The first one is the tax deferment program that allowed taxpayers to defer their payments from July 1st, which had an end date of payment by August 3rd, to then October 1st, the 90-day deferral period. The other program, and there is an eligibility component to that, and the details are on, I don't want to take all the time because, I don't want to answer your questions, but details are on our website. It's actually very clear on our website. The other is the delinquent payment program, which is a lower payment from a pretty extreme 18%, because we need our property owners to pay taxes, because that's how we function, to a 3% delinquent rate. So details of that are, both of these state taxes actually define how we assess property taxes, and the state allowed us to do these programs. We adopted everything that was available to us. There is, again, an eligibility component to the tax deferral program, not to the delinquent program. That is automatic. And then, as you know, the town has been so committed, especially Kristen, primarily Kristen, not especially Kristen, detailing and communicating from the town side programs that were available to you, businesses. And much of that was part of the CARES program, the PPP program, and things in the beginning were frenetic, and there were a lot of unknowns and information coming at us, and then conflicting information. So we all know that you were really, this was very challenging for all of you as well. We hear very clearly that the PPP program is not working as it could and should for our business owners. Primarily the deadlines. There's several reasons why it's not working, but just so you know, and Kristen has this information as well, as I'm sure Chris does too. And Chris and Kristen both have been communicating with our businesses and getting information out. In addition to masks and thermometers and all that as well. But the PPP on May 28th, the House of Representatives did pass some changes to the PPP bill. It still has a ways to go to be enacted, but I know this is of primary concern to many of our businesses that have received the PPP. The changes included in this legislation increases the covered period for expenses paid or incurred from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. It extends the term of the loan from 2 years to 5 years. It changes the requirement that 75% of forgivable costs must be spent on payroll to a requirement that only 60% of the forgivable costs be spent on payroll. The June 30, 2020 rehiring deadline would be extended to the end of the year, December 31st, and it would allow small businesses both to use PPP and defer their 2020 employment taxes until 2021 and 2022. And those are critical changes that are needed for the PPP program to work for our businesses. Especially, we heard it very clearly from the restaurant community that they were shut and they can't open internally yet because of state law, and so they cannot spend the money as they would need to spend it on their employees. So those now must be passed by the Senate and the President. So it's going to be it's got a bit of a way to go. So I would say for you, I think that Senator Blumenthal heard very clearly that these changes were needed. But I would write to both Senator Murphy and Senator Blumenthal. And actually, I would write to the Majority Leader, Senator McConnell, to say how important it is to your businesses that you receive that kind of relief and adjustment. So what the town council did, I have one more thing and then I want to take your questions. What the town council did once we got through our budget, and it was very clear that when actually Matt Hart, the town manager, presented his budget to us on March 10th, and that is the date that the state declared a state of emergency. So that morning, I said to Matt, time to go back to the drawing board and re-envision this budget in a crisis with people losing their jobs, and we cannot have a tax increase. So life changed very dramatically, obviously, you all know, and schools closed and town hall closed, and so many things are changing. There's so many unknowns that we have to budget for, as you do too, when purchasing and all the things that you do. So we knew that we could not increase property taxes, but we also know that we have to plan for a variety of scenarios. We also know we could have another emergency. So we could have a hurricane. The hurricane season is supposed to be pretty vibrant this year, which just is a bit scary, but and other emergencies that could come up. So we need to make sure that we are not eliminating our rainy day fund, doing one-time revenue kind of uses that position us in a place that we're weaker than we were going into this. We are trying to make sure that we have the ability to respond to a variety of needs down the road. So we took a little bit from fund balance. We decreased costs, largely part-time workers that were supporting library services, senior centers that were not open, and then our leisure services, scaling back what we could, looking at capital projects, spending freezes, hiring freezes, all those kinds of things. So our non-union management team all took pay freezes. So a lot of work was done. A lot of work to do. So we've said that we're going to take 3-month chunk looks at our budget and pivot as needed and re-strategize. But going forward, we have standing committees that function with town staff, but we really wanted to flatten the communication and the operation to make it more efficient, more inclusive, and commit to our community that we're going to listen and we're going to recover. We're going to respond to a crisis, a health crisis that we still have, and recover during this period of time as well. So how could we do that? And I tried to talk it through a couple of times, and I was listening, and I've been participating in the Bloomberg mayor calls that every Thursday. They actually just ended, and we are going to start. There's going to be a different recovery kind of call going forward. But one of the calls was describing government as always designed for probability. We eliminate the chances of failure by sort of taking all of the really sometimes very innovative things, but also the chances that to take chances. And so we structure ourselves as probability government. And what we really need right now is possibility government, and to give ourselves the possibilities of changing and doing things differently and looking at things differently, because we have problems in the way we operate. Sometimes there are very big silos up, and sometimes the community doesn't hear the things that government needs to decide on, and government is not hearing what the community needs are. And so how could we flatten that and make it more efficient, but still respect town staff, make sure that they are not being, there's not a shadow government going on, and all of those things. So I established these special advisory committees. They are bipartisan in nature. They're still subject to FOI, but we really wanted to make them community inclusive. And so I'm letting you know about this because you're going to have an important role in these committees as time goes on. And this is going to be a great way for you to communicate with us. And the two committees are a Special Advisory Committee on Economic and Workforce Recovery, which is where I would imagine most of your concerns and interest would be. This is to be responsible for evaluating the needs of West Hartford's businesses, nonprofits, and workforce as a result of the pandemic COVID-19, including but not limited to the following industries: restaurants and hospitality, arts and culture, entertainment and leisure, professional and business services, construction and building trades, property management, transportation services, and healthcare services. And general oversight with town staff. That's a standing phrase from our standing committee, so that's not new. The town council oversees the town manager, who oversees everything. So and we review and evaluate recommendations concerning policies that would assist in the reopening the town's economy and allow businesses and nonprofits to operate in a way that is healthy and safe, including but not limited to recommendations concerning business retention, business resources, occupational safety, and workforce development. And then the other advisory committee is Special Advisory Committee on Social and Community Recovery. And some of these are going to overlap and have impacts on your businesses, and if you're residents, surely on you as a resident. And the workforce recovery also has a little bit of this component as well. But this is to be responsible for evaluating quality of life issues, including but not limited to social needs with regard to physical health, mental well-being, food security, childcare and education, technology access, transportation, and at-risk populations. Be responsible for joint deliberation with the Board of Education, consider needs of school age populations, and have general oversight over the town departments, that meet the social and community needs. And I'll also review and evaluate recommendations concerning policies that would maintain and improve the high quality of life in West Hartford during the pandemic of COVID-19. And so those and the counselors that are assigned to those committees are, I am co-chair of both of them, with Leon Davidoff being the Economic and Workforce Recovery, and Ben Winograd, Lee Gold, Beth Kerrigan, and Chris Williams are on that committee. And then for the Social and Community Recovery, this will be co-chaired by Lam Sweeney, with counselors Carol Blanks and Mary Fay, but both counselors participating in both committees, and if any counselor wants to switch or has an interest in something else, we're very flexible. And we've had 3 sessions, 3 different committee meetings. They will be meeting on Mondays at 6 p.m. and alternating, although we already had a change. We need to talk about leisure services for the summer for our social and community department. And so our economic development next meeting will be on June 15th. And we are actually developing our agenda for that. And so if there's something that you would like to see on that agenda, I would love to hear from you. One of the things that I did was reach out. Kristen actually did a great presentation with Capital Workforce, the Capital Workforce Government, and I have something on that, and Kristen, I'm sure can help answer a question if necessary. But the Capital Workforce Partners, and in training and workforce development, and there's actually going to be a virtual job fair. I didn't print out the communication that you sent. That was very helpful, Kristen. So we had a Mohammed come from Capital Workforce, and also Ben, and they were great about explaining their programs. We also reached out to the career department at University of St. Joseph to talk about maybe partnering for some internship programs to provide some kind of support, whether it's technology, marketing, expertise that students have to match up. So we were going to invite University of St. Joseph to come to one of our meetings as well. But if there's other people that you would like to hear from, we would love to hear, or if you would have questions and want to log on, we're also doing them on Facebook Live, so they're very accessible. And with that, I will pause and take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for that great presentation. So a couple questions that have come in, and all attendees, please feel free to either put your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box so that we can share them with the Mayor. So Mayor, the first question, any update on restaurants being able to allow inside dining? Is it happening June 20th at a partial capacity?
Thank you for the question. It was very clear from, I took the Lieutenant Governor came in on last Friday, and we took a walk through town. And in talking to restaurants, it was very clear that they really want at least 25% capacity now, and think that most everybody felt that they could do that safely, in addition to the outdoor dining. But the thought was from Lieutenant Governor at the time, which was Friday. It seems like a long time ago already, but that they would be having 50% capacity on June 20th. It depends on testing and I think what the health data reveals, but it looks right now as though that will be the case. But I would. Let's all stay tuned and listen to the governor's guidelines on that. And I think he recognizes very clearly how important it is for restaurants to have that stability. With weather and outdoor dining, you don't know what's going to be. So to have that stability is really, really important. So I'm hopeful that will be the case, and possibly 25% before.
Excellent, thank you. This is about the Ppp Flexibility Act. I know that you had touched upon some of the changes that at the federal level are trying to get passed. But Ppp Flexibility Act, we were awarded the first round. Unfortunately, our 8th week ends next week, so the Flexibility Act can't help us. We've used our funding, yet we are a long way from opening. We we need more money to cover us for more weeks. Just wanted to throw that out there. So I'm not sure, Mayor, if you have any sort of suggestions. I think that, for businesses who are having that same challenge, which are many, I think it's the fact that those new changes haven't been passed yet. It's kind of a wait and see. There might be possibility for this to be able to help, but can you comment on any other channels to be able to support that type of business? And just for reference, it's a nonprofit.
Yeah, no, this is a critical issue, and then there's incredible frustration that there has not been action on this already, because I think that the messages are clear. I think we just continue the pressure on the Senate, and obviously the House understands that this is important and needed because it's passed. So it's unfortunately, this is, beyond what local government can do, except that I can continue to relay the message, which I have to our federal delegation, definitely our senators that still need to take action. But I just, I'm sorry, and I'm frustrated, and I hear this so frequently how important the extension is. More than anything right now is the extension, and then you can work out the other issues. Just extend it. So maybe we can just fight for that, and say, look, by the end, this is the 8th week. Let's go. And so, you were so on the ball by applying and getting what you needed to get quickly. And now, you're in a position where you're disadvantaged by not being able to be open. So anyway, we'll continue to fight.
Thank you, Mayor. Another question: is there a date set for partial street closure, of Farmington Ave? And just a clarification, if you want to add this, no, there's no closure plan for Farmington Ave, but this is as it pertains to outdoor dining, I believe.
So there's not a closure for Farmington Ave, and actually we're not speaking about closures on any of our roads, but we are talking about reduced traffic and reduced traffic flow, and use of public rights of way, and public parking, and creative uses for that. So I am just telling my husband that I'm part of a webinar right now, and move on. So I can't right now, sorry. The wall. Okay, so we hopefully by the end of this week and early next week, you will see pretty dramatic changes to LaSalle, Farmington Avenue, South Main Street, and hopefully Blueback Square is in process, as well as having areas, sort of eating corrals and outdoor commerce areas that will be very useful for expanding service to customers. So we're hopeful that will be done. Kristen spent a lot of time doing outreach with businesses, and I think there was initially the start was to basically close LaSalle, and then other businesses and communications, public safety, public works, delivery, retail. There were lots of different stakeholders that had really significant concerns about closing the streets to motor vehicle traffic. So right now, it's a one-way, one lane, going north actually on LaSalle, and then Farmington Avenue, we will be using on-street spaces for extended dining, and South Main as well.
Great, thank you. Very well put. It's always a challenge to find a balance between everybody's needs, but hopefully we achieved that with the plans that are forthcoming. Another question: will parking fees be waived in Blueback? I would assume that this would also apply to the center. I have a street front business and could use some parking guaranteed for my clients. Any recommendations?
So this is a challenging. This is a bit challenging because parking is a science, and you want behaviors to promote people to move from the most desirable convenient spaces. What happens if you this is really, we've worked on this a long time, and I grew up in West Hartford, and we've had paid parking for a very, very long time. It was quarters meters, but there was paid model. And one of the reasons for that is to turn over the parking for the most convenient parking spaces. We obviously, as you know, have stopped all paid parking right now in the center and Blueback. consistently to alleviate first businesses were closed, and then once businesses started to open, to make sure that they are, it's easy and people aren't thinking about it, and we want to give all the tools we can for businesses to continue to recover. Problem is that, again, behaviors can start so that workers or people that are there all day could park in those spaces, and so it's not going to help really the businesses, and it won't help the town either, because we're not receiving any money for that. So that's a problem. Blueback was structured, and we have a very, very long agreement on how Blueback was structured, but the bonding for the parking garages were revenue bonds that are from parking revenue. So, and the special services district tax as well. So we have an obligation to charge and to pay those bonds. The bonds are up in, I think, 3 years, or maybe the 4th year. So we're at the end of it, but we still need that model to work. So we will go back to a paid parking model. We're not going to do it yet. We're not even talking about it yet, but we know it's something we're going to have to go back to. But I want people to understand that the paid parking really is the investment in where that gets paid for Blueback. Those are paid garages, and once those are done, and the money goes to help to preserve Blueback, move snow away, all of those things. The center, same thing. The flowers, the security, the parking monitors, the maintenance, the flowers, snow removal. All of those things come from parking revenue, and would probably be challenged in the budget. And so the center businesses benefit from those parking fees, but also they benefit from the behavioral, that we're not like a park road where you could sit and have workers parked in front and not move for all day. That's a change in behavior when you have a paid parking model.
Thank you. And not to continue to go extra into parking, but we have a follow-up question. So outside of the employer and workforce parking programs that exist, a question about whether a business would be able to pay for a dedicated parking spot.
Everything is complicated. We don't. I think there's options for that. We're going to, again, I want to do possibility and not probability. So we are happy to look at different models. But we also have to look at what the impact is going to be. Is there revenue loss? Is there capacity loss? So we will look at that. I think if you have a suggestion, I would say send it to me, Kristen, and let us look into what your specific request is. And I want to just do a shout out for Kristen. She was so helpful in the parking for the workforce in the center to free up spaces, and things were working better than they had been. And so we really we're so thrilled with that, and hopefully we can go back to I look forward to a more normal time at some time, but anyway. So.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I just want to piggyback on those very kind words. If anyone does have a business that's located in West Hartford Center or Blueback Square, please feel free to contact me. I am more than happy to explain as well as facilitate connections to the my colleagues that run those reduced rate workforce programs that are available for you and your employees. One other question, Mayor, can you talk about if you know when a decision will be made on what school will look like in the fall?
That's a key question. And when we talk about the committees and you talk about job, workforce recovery, it's very hard if schools aren't open and you're still, overseeing, with your kids and trying to work, and it's just so hard. So the fall, we don't have any guidance yet, and I'm in was daily, now it's every other day, call with an executive team, and it includes the superintendent of schools, and they're planning for multiple scenarios. They're planning for some levels of school being open, others to have a reduced capacity every other day kind of a thing, and a variety of things. But they are, I will say, I think almost every model has some form of opening. But if there's another wave and things are dangerous for children to go back, things could change. Right now I'm also on the CC, the Connecticut Children's Medical Center Foundation Board, and we've had a epidemiologist come in and speak to the impact on children. And for the most part, they do think that they can, if they know about the inflammatory, it's really after the body has fought COVID, the immune system in children is so effective. Actually, it goes into overdrive, and so it is impacting in that inflammatory way, and starting oftentimes with a stomach ache. They feel like if they can educate families and have those symptoms identified early, they're much more effective in treating it. So seems to definitely be less risk to children. The question is spreading, and so there's talk of really keeping kids in strict pods and how that will work. So. I also am a UConn trustee, and there's a lot of talk about that residential component, and then the students going back to school from a higher ed perspective. Almost every higher ed institution is talking about some kind of attendance, physical attendance in school, also with increased testing. So almost starting day one fresh, testing everybody, and then keeping them in their pods. There's going to be risk in every decision that we make. We understand too, though, there's significant risk in keeping kids at home, certain kids falling behind, and there's incredible pressure on families to work. And you're not going to be able to bring people back in the same way if school isn't in session. So a non-answer, but those are all the considerations. The hope is by August 1, there will be a plan.
Great, thank you. I have a couple more questions. Given the forecast of economic recovery being 10 years in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, what is the forecast for the future town budgets?
That's also a very, very good question. We do a 5-year forecast actually for our rating agencies. We do a 10-year forecast for capital projects, even further. So we are doing those things, but it's amazing. Even when we were looking at our rating agency forecast, I could rip it up right now, right? So so many of our models have changed. We're going to have to, like I said, every 3 months kind of relook at what we do. But I do think that we have to do multi-year forecasting and recovery. We're not going to get back to normal in a year necessarily on the town side, especially if we're using fund balance to meet needs, and how do we build that up. So some of it is internal decision making, and if we're using some of the means that we've got, whether it's bonding, fund balance, or some other kind of models that we're using in decreasing workforce and then building it back up, we definitely do have to look at those things. It's really hard right now, though, because there's so many unknowns, even in 1 year, on what we're going to be able to do and when we're going to be able to resume our businesses, as it is for all of you. So.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a little trouble unmuting myself. A question that came in through Facebook Live. Mayor, how do you feel the governor's office, staff, and the Reopen Connecticut committee has done to relay information to you and work with you on a close level to get the town back what it needs to be and answer questions?
The communication's been very good. I will say the governor's staff has been very responsive. There have been so many unknowns and so many inconsistencies. And I think the governor found guidance and partnerships with other states that were moving together. And because Governor Cuomo was ahead in some of the things that the way and more severity of the way that COVID was impacting his state, they had to respond a little earlier, although the impacts on Fairfield County were pretty significant pretty quickly. So having that partnership was very helpful. Whenever I've had a question, many questions can't be answered because the unknowns are still there. We don't know what the federal government is going to do to support state and local government. Right now, there is, like the PPP, there's commitment on that from the House, but there's no other commitment for state and local governments. And yet we know our revenues are down, our costs are up. And where do we turn? So we can't, I mean, our taxpayers are, 40% of people are well more than 40%, but we've got the majority of people, everybody's impacted, and the majority of people have some kind of reduced income right now. So there's incredible frustration. But I will say that when we've asked questions that there's been answers to, we've received very clear answers. When we pushed for answers, we've received, a timeline that we will get answers. There's some things that have been a little slower. I think the nursing facilities and have been really challenged. Department of Public Health initially, I think there were problems in the way there was response and planning, knowing that congregant care. We're going to be impacted so severely by COVID. And part of that, though, was because testing wasn't available, and we were not getting the information on how we could ramp up the testing. If we had a lab, then the supplies were challenged. So it's just been really frustrating. But overall, the communication's been very good with the state government, and they've supported us. And I hope that when we have a plan for financing, that the money's coming in from the state. Right now, we're looking at election money that was in the CARES Act. We know that's coming. There's been money going to the schools based on formula, so that's coming. But there's really no other. The school money is pretty small in the scheme of what the schools are enduring right now. But again, not clear-cut answer, but overall, very positive.
Thank you. And I don't see any other questions that are entered, but I personally have one more question for you, Mayor. So I know that this has been a large component of your communications with the community, so residents as well as businesses. But can you touch on masks a little bit? So the requirements for people wearing masks, business owners, what advice on what they should do if they feel uncomfortable with people not wearing masks, especially if they're coming into, their stores for a retailer or so on and so forth. So can you touch a little bit on the rules and the regulations and some recommendations of what people should do to make sure that we continue to move in a positive direction?
Well, this is a little bit, it's a little bit squishy because, especially now, I think I've had a couple conversations with our police chief, and we are concerned. The health department is taking the lead on a lot of this. So if a business can operate in the way that they feel is safe, and so requiring masks inside is 100% appropriate. And there are guidelines from the CDC, and the state has adopted guidelines, and they are requiring masks inside for businesses. If a business has the ability, but there are exceptions, right? So if you have a child under 3, they don't have to wear a mask. Or if you have a health condition, you don't have to wear a mask. So a person could say, I have a health condition, it's difficult for me to breathe. And so some people are walking into businesses without masks, and businesses are saying you need to wear a mask. And so there's this back and forth. We do think that there's 100%, no shoes, no shirt, no service kind of that's what the governor has said. You have the ability to call the health department. You can call anybody in town government, but call the health department to get support on some enforcement. They actually can pull permits and as can zoning. So there are requirements and tools that we have. The softer touch is what I think police and everybody are asking for now, especially in the position that we're in. But you have the ability to reject service to someone who is not wearing a mask. If someone has a condition they can't go in a mask, then have somebody else in their family, or a neighbor or somebody do what they need to do. But or maybe there's a way. My mother, for example, is getting her hearing aids checked, and they have said, we will come out to you, take your hearing aids and go back in and repair them and then bring them back out to you. So if there's ways to do that's can be very, very helpful. But masks are, we've talked about it in the center. When you're eating, obviously you can't wear a mask. When you get up from your table and you're walking, you're not going to be 6 feet away from the people sitting at the table. You should be wearing a mask. There is enforcement tickets that we could enforce, but right now the police are saying we really want to, as the health department, we're all talking about more of an educational and community-wide commitment to doing what's right for the health and well-being of all of us. Businesses are really concerned about that sort of enforcement of tickets as well. And how do you can't prove somebody can't wear a mask because of health reasons on the spot, and that's a difficult dynamic. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I don't see any additional questions. I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for all of your dedication to this community, for always being accessible, and wondering if you have any sort of closing thoughts or closing words.
Thank you. I would just say, I am I'm grateful to everyone that sponsored this event, to Chris and Kristen for their leadership and support for businesses. We are all here for you. We want you to recover in the best way you can. We want to help in any way we can. We're here to listen. We don't know what your challenges are if you don't communicate them to us. So please know that your comments, questions, feedback is welcome. You're not being a pain. We need it. And we also we hope that you are patient with us, because we're going to make mistakes. We're trying to do what is best, but we're all going to make mistakes. We talk about we're building the plane as we fly it. And there's going to be blips and errors, and we'll do our best to correct them and accommodate as many people as we can to move forward and make West Hartford even stronger coming out on the other side of COVID-19. So be well, be safe, and again, I thank you for your commitment to West Hartford.
Thank you. Chris, anything else from the chamber?
Yes, Mayor, I just want to thank you once again for your availability and your candidness in answering all these questions today, and your continued support. I just want to thank the chamber staff, Kate Coves and Jesse Boulier, who were running this whole show from behind the scenes, and of course Kristen, who is just a valuable partner in the work we're doing to support the businesses. And just a reminder, most of what we talked about today is available online. Kristen, through Economic Development at the town website, is loaded with resources, as is the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, whchamber.com. And to all the business owners out there, we can't say it enough. If there's anything we can be doing to support your businesses, reach out to either one of us, and we will certainly do what we can to get you an answer, or get you the support, or connect you with the resource you need. So with that, I will close out today's event, and thank you all for attending. If you caught only parts of this, it is going to be available on YouTube, and also will be rewatchable on Facebook. So thank you, and have a great day.